what does minimal mean in an MVP? My God.
Oh my
My
god.
God.
This is my biggest blind spot. This is my biggest challenge. MVPs are so hard for me to conceptualize and to like get off the ground. It never feels like enough. I always want
Hmm.
more in my minimal product.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. It's so fun in the early days to think about all the things that your product could do, right?
Yeah.
Like in some ways, every idea you have becomes like this rabbit hole that only gets deeper, right? Like where the uh all of its capability, is the thing that then excites you more and more and more, like as you go deeper. And it's so hard to come back to the surface to mix the metaphor and see the top of the iceberg, right? Which the top of the iceberg is your MVP, right? The bottom of the iceberg is everything else that doesn't really matter in those early days. And you figuring out where the water line is the very important part. There are a couple of strategies that I have found over the years to work really well for this. Um, the first one is to figure out the kind of the part of your app that if that doesn't exist, there is nothing else. The way that I recommend doing this is making a breadboard diagram, which you can read about on the interwebs, but it is essentially a way, even on my own website, plug drewiz.cool. but
Sure.
basically, it's a diagram, and maybe I'll send Henry some screens so that if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this visually. But instead of like making a prototype of your product in like screens, you think about it in terms of like only text and actions, right? And you start linking text and actions together in terms of the workflow of how things work for your user throughout the app. And then you can quickly see, based on the in and out points of those little lines, where the biggest majority of the in and out points are. And those are the things that you have to do first, because those are the things that are central and everything connects to or out from. That will be much easier to understand if you click the link in the description to go read an article that I wrote, or are watching on YouTube and have looked at the little thing that I sent to Henry. Okay. So that's number one. And a concrete example of this, I'm working on an app called Rexy, which is a recommendation sharing and storing application. Obviously, in that world, the central things that you have to do are to be able to see things that people have recommended to you and send recommendations. Now, that might not sound like a very interesting app. Like we have screens for like a social homepage where you can see like things that your friends have recommended and all that stuff. But none of that matters, especially with point number two, is when you think about who will use this at launch. And who will use this at launch for us is 25 of our friends and family, right? And in that world, where there's only 25 people on this app, there does not need to be a home feed that is showing you things that your friends, because there's only like of a group of 25 at max, you could see 25 things, right? Like so that's one screen that just doesn't exist. The other one is the profile screen, which is the thing that shows you like, oh, like lets you friend somebody and lets you see like the things that they have been recommending and stuff. Obviously, that doesn't matter in an app that at launch will have no recommendations from anyone, right? It's a useless screen at that point. It's so easy in our heads when we're designing to think about what this will look like, a year from now, or in some best case scenario. The thing that you have to think about is in software design, what's called the empty state, right? Which is what it looks like when there's nothing there. And if what it looks like when there's nothing there is uninteresting or unuseful, it doesn't need to be in your app at launch. Henry, what do you think about these tips?
Yeah, really good pointed tips on exactly how to pare down your MVP. I definitely fall often into the trap of sketching out a million different
Scope creep.
features and trying to prioritize them. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
scope creep definitely happens. And when you're working with freelancers to bring your ideas to life, whether it's design or development, I always feel so bad about the scope creep. So these are super important things to keep in mind and to hopefully live
Yeah.
by when you're
Yeah,
MVP.
because that's what really makes it minimal viable, right? Like that's all we're going for. Anything else is extra.